They call them unsinkable aircraft carriers. But are China's artificial islands truly fortresses? Or easy targets in the age of U.S. Tomahawks and F-35s? They rise out of the turquoise waters like scars on the ocean man-made islands, built by dredging sand, reinforced with concrete, and bristling with radar domes and missile launchers. From the air, they look like fortresses. Runways cut across the reefs, hangars line the edges, and surface-to-air missile batteries point skyward. Beijing calls them strategic strongholds. Western media calls them unsinkable aircraft carriers. But the real question is this: are they truly fortresses capable of stopping the U.S. Navy, or are they fragile castles of sand designed more for intimidation than survival? When China installed the HQ-9 surface-to-air missile system on these artificial islands, the message was loud and clear: trespass at your own risk. With a range of up to 200 kilometers, advanced AESA radar, and the ability to strike aircraft, drones, or cruise missiles, the HQ-9 was billed as China's answer to America's dominance of the skies. On paper, it looked like a game changer. A handful of islands scattered across the South China Sea, each ringed with missile batteries, could theoretically create a dome of denial, a no-go zone for American carriers and patrol aircraft. For Beijing, it was the ultimate symbol of sovereignty and strength. For Washington, it was a challenge that could not go unanswered. But here's the problem with fixed defenses. History is rarely kind to them. The Maginot Line in France was hailed as impenetrable until German tanks simply went around it. The massive battleships of the early 20th century were thought to be unsinkable until aircraft and submarines proved otherwise. Today, artificial islands bristling with HQ-9 South may look like fortresses, but in reality, they are static targets in a world where mobility, stealth, and precision are the keys to survival. So the question becomes, how much of China's fortress strategy is real military strength, and how much of it is political theater? Consider how the U.S. Navy trains for exactly this scenario. A carrier strike group does not fear a single battery of HQ-9 South. It prepares for layered defenses, multi-axis attacks, and electronic warfare. American destroyers equipped with the Aegis system track hundreds of targets simultaneously. Tomahawk cruise missiles can fly low, hugging the waves, adjusting mid-flight, and striking targets with pinpoint precision from over 1,000 kilometers away. In a real conflict, AU's Navy strike might begin with electronic warfare, blinding radars on the islands. Then swarms of Tomahawks would rain down, overwhelming defenses with sheer numbers. For every HQ-9 that launches, another missile or two slips through. And after the radar domes are shattered and the missile batteries silenced, carrier aircraft would sweep in to finish the job. This raises a provocative question. Could any of these islands survive the opening salvo of an American strike? Analysts are divided. Some argue that China's fortifications could absorb punishment long enough to delay U.S. forces, buying Beijing precious hours in a Taiwan crisis. Others argue that these islands are more liability than asset, vulnerable to long-range strikes and impossible to resupply once under fire. A fortress only works if it can hold, and once fuel, ammunition, and food run out, even the most impressive base becomes a hollow shell. Yet we cannot dismiss them outright. Each island extends China's radar coverage deeper into the South China Sea. Each runway can host fighters, drones, or maritime patrol aircraft. Each HQ-9 battery forces American planners to take one more threat into account. War isn't only about weapons, it's about perception. By transforming reefs into strongholds, Beijing has turned disputed waters into symbols of power. Even if the islands could not withstand a full-scale assault, their very presence changes the calculus for every patrol, every freedom of navigation operation, every encounter between U.S. destroyers and Chinese frigates. Still, let's imagine the confrontation. An American destroyer sails within 12 nautical miles of fiery cross reef. Chinese state media blast headlines. Our HQ-9 South have locked on to the intruder. But what happens next? Does Beijing dare to fire, knowing that a single missile launch could trigger overwhelming retaliation? Does Washington back down, or does it simply continue, confident that the island's bark is worse than its bite? The standoff becomes less about hardware and more about nerves, signaling, and credibility. And that is the hidden truth. These islands may not need to fire a shot to serve their purpose. Their strength is psychological as much as physical, yet psychology cuts both ways. American pilots and sailors know that U.S. technology has been tested in combat again and again. Aegis destroyers have shot down ballistic missiles in tests. F-35s have flown undetected past advanced radar networks. Tomahawks have reshaped battlefields from Iraq to Syria. By contrast, China's HQ-9 South, YJ-12 anti-ship missiles, and even the artificial islands themselves remain unproven under real fire. And that gap, the difference between theory and reality, is what fuels both confidence and doubt. Could a lucky missile strike disable an American destroyer? Possibly. Could a barrage overwhelm defenses? In theory, yes. But history tells us that America's naval doctrine thrives on adaptation, redundancy, and overwhelming response. One strike may sting. It will not decide the war. Here's where the debate grows even more interesting. Some U.S. strategists quietly ask whether the Navy should continue pouring billions into aircraft carriers that might one day sail within range of DF-21Ds or island-based HQ-9 South. Wouldn't submarines, drones, and distributed forces be safer bets for the future? It's a controversial argument because carriers are not just weapons, they are political symbols, instruments of deterrence, and floating embassies of steel. China knows this, which is why its propaganda loves the phrase carrier killer. Sink one carrier, and you don't just destroy a ship, you strike at America's image of invincibility. But so far, the U.S. Navy's record speaks for itself. No American carrier has been sunk in battle since World War II. Carriers have faced mines, missiles, submarines, and aircraft, and they are still here. Can China's island fortresses claim the same pedigree? Not yet. And so we return to the core question. Are these artificial islands true fortresses or simply fragile symbols? In a war game, they are prime targets. In a political contest, they are tools of intimidation. Perhaps that is their real purpose, not to win battles, but to shape the battles that never happen. By raising the cost of U.S. operations, by sowing doubt in the minds of allies, by creating the appearance of control, Beijing may achieve its goals without ever testing whether an HQ-9 can really shoot down an F-35. But let's not underestimate the danger of illusions. History is filled with leaders who believed their defenses were impenetrable, only to watch them crumble in the first storm of war. Artificial islands may look like fortresses now, but in the age of hypersonic missiles, precision strikes, and network fleets, being immovable is as much a weakness as it is a strength. The U.S. Navy, with its global experience and proven adaptability, continues to bet on mobility, resilience, and overwhelming force. And in the contest between a fortress and a fleet, history tends to favor the fleet. So here is the question I leave you with. If conflict erupted tomorrow, would you bet on the static defenses of China's artificial islands or the mobile, battle-tested power of a U.S. carrier strike group? Which is the real fortress and which is the illusion? The answer may not be simple, but it is worth debating because in the South China Sea, perception itself can shape reality.